Hello and welcome back to Body Joy. This is week number 9 and Sense Organ Care. That's what we are going to be focusing on this week primarily. Before we do so though, I would love to do a quick course check-in and a quick review just to keep our minds on track. I know you guys are probably really aware of what we've been doing the last 9 weeks, but it can't hurt to just keep on going back to like the outline so that your mind has something to wrap its mind around. So what did we look at? So we worked on earlier, lighter dinners. We worked on our bed routine, how to start the day right. Then what is a skillful way to move our bodies. Then we looked at diet, self-massage, then some meditation and the healthier eating guidelines. Pause this recording for a moment and reflect back and ask yourself what has changed over the last 9 weeks and where do you still need to grow. So what are the things that you have put into place and what are the things that you still would like to accelerate? And what do you notice about your energy? What do you notice about your sleep, your emotions, and your focus? So this is very important to start noticing what is shifting, because only then do you know if all the efforts that you're putting forth are actually bearing fruit. If you don't pay attention to your body, to your energy, to your sleep, to your emotions, to your mind, well, you don't know if what you have been doing and what you have been working on is actually working. So pause the recording for a second and ask yourself those questions, like just briefly reflect. What have I incorporated? How do I feel different? And what is it that I still would like to work on? I'm so not asking you to be at your end goal at all. By now, we probably all understand that working on your health is a trajectory. And we have a lifelong to perfect this. Maybe even multiple lifetimes, who knows? But what I do want you to get is for you to just be aware of where are you at. What else do you want to set in motion? And how much more emphasis do you want to and do you need to put on your health journey so you feel the way you want to feel? So as an example, I've been working on my health journey for probably 14 years through various things. I've been doing a lot of yoga, a lot of Thai massage, a lot of consciousness shifting through Vedic astrology, Ayurvedic medicine. All of these things that I was studying, they were also working on my own health journey. And only about a couple of years ago have I decided, I'm in a pretty good place health-wise right now. I don't need to work on myself any longer on that level. I mean, yes, I continue doing the practice, I keep paying attention, but my major focus is no longer on my health. It has shifted to business and relationship. There's all these different areas of our lives that we can pay attention to, yeah? There's relationship, there's finances, there's career, there's health, there's all these different areas. And so it is just by us being aware of like, okay, where am I? Where would I like to be? Do I still want to pay a lot of attention to that? And if the answer is yes, that's great. You continue. And if the answer is like, I need to focus on my relationships right now, and then that's great too. Then you just keep going with the things that you've already put into place and come back at a later time to learn more. So let's move on to sense organ care. Your senses are really the gateway to experience your existence. It's the gateway to exist to the world we live in, right? We see things, we hear things, we smell things, we taste things, we feel things, and that is our way of experiencing the world. So the senses are our receptors of our environment. So if the sense organ receptors are clean and they're sharp, they also create clear perception. Of course, on some level we know that, but we forget sometimes, and we forget how precious these instruments really are and how incredibly sensitive they are. Really, they are our gateway to awareness and perception. And yet we disrespect them sometimes. We may be watching television and we're watching the show that we are immensely immersed in, but we notice our eyes getting tired and our body getting tired, and we don't really pay attention because we're really so engrossed in this show. Or we're chewing some food that really doesn't taste any good and we swallow it anyway. Or maybe there's some music blaring in the background that you really don't care about, that actually kind of is offensive to your ear, but you don't want to ask your husband or your boyfriend or whoever to turn it off because you know they really enjoy it. How often have we received touch that we haven't been comfortable or too shy maybe to say, hey, that doesn't feel right. Will you touch me in a different way? So there's all these little things that we're starting to pay attention to on this body joy path. And the more you get the idea that your body is truly precious, that the body is the temple of your soul, the more attuned you're starting to be. From an Ayurvedic perspective, there are 3 causes of disease. And you can see on the left side, it says Samhita. Samhita simply means the misuse of the senses. So that is one of the major causes of disease, that we're using the senses in a way that are disharmonious. So because we are taking in through the sense organs, we're taking in food through the mouth, through the sense of taste. We're taking in smells through the nose. We're taking in everything we see through the eyes, everything we hear through the ears, everything we feel through the skin. If we don't feed those sense organs in a harmonious way, they will give us a sense of perception that is unhealthy. And we often get carried away by our senses and by our desires because, oh my God, that chocolate cake tasted so good. I want a second piece. And before you know it, you ate 2 or 3 pieces instead of just a little bite. Or that music was so amazing. I want to go again to this rock concert and again to this rock concert and again to this rock concert. Not really caring that the ears are being overburdened by the loud sound. And I could come up with a ton of examples, but it's just that we are so drawn to the desire for pleasure that we often forget to really nourish our senses and come back to that. So then the second cause of disease is called pragya-parad. Pragya-parad. It's often translated as crime against wisdom. So it's basically the intellect failing. When we know something's bad for us and we do it anyway. So for example, in the example of the chocolate cake, what do? Or our senses say, oh, that chocolate cake, gotta eat it. And then the intellect says, well, yeah, but remember, last time you ate that chocolate cake, you gained 5 pounds and then you had to go to the gym and it was really not that great for you. And remember, you felt nauseous after that second piece of chocolate cake. And the intellect is already telling us, don't do it. But despite the fact that we know that that chocolate cake is going to make us fat and that we're going to have to work really hard to get it off, we're doing it anyway and we're eating that chocolate cake anyway. That is crime against wisdom. And then we have parinama, which means the decay due to time and motion. And there's 2 different times that we deal with in our lives. There's linear time and there's biological time. Linear time we can't really change. You're 50 years old, you're 60 years old, you're 55, whatever your age is, that linear time of progression, we can't really hold it back. But what we can influence is biological time, because biological time depends on motion. And so the idea is the faster we move, the more quickly we age, and the more likely it is that we become sick. Now, often that motion isn't really referred to as the motion in the body, it's referred to as the motion in the mind. But it's just like body and mind are linked. So often when our minds move really fast, our bodies move very fast as well. So we can actually access the mind by moving our bodies slower. The example is between a turtle and a dog who gets older. Turtles can get up to 300 years old. And how fast do turtles move? They move very slowly and deliberately. And the dogs are running around, moving fast over there and over here and over this and that. Even just talking about it makes me crazy. It makes me even age fast and have more wrinkles. So the idea is, if we move slower, more deliberately, more with ease, the decay and the disease process will also be halted a little bit. So going back to the first cause of disease, we talked about samhita, the misuse of the senses. So this is how we are going, where we are going to spend most of our discussion today, is how can we nourish the senses so they can actually show up for us more fully, more completely, and then we actually show some love to them. The eyes are there for us. They see all day long. Our ears hear all day long. Even at night, I'm sure we hear. We just don't recognize it. Our taste buds are there for us to taste the delicious food we are eating. Our skin's there to have pleasurable experiences. And so there's all this, the senses show up for us. And so the question then becomes, how can we show up for our senses? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So why are the senses so important? Watch your words when you recount a story sometime. So say you went down to the river in the early summertime, and you say to a friend, hey, yesterday I went down to the river and listened to the song of the flowing water. What are you using? You listened, ears. And the chirping of the birds, again, hearing, ears. I saw many amazing flowers, and again, seeing, eyes, along the way, and felt the warmth of the sun on my skin, feeling, touch. There was a beautiful bush with newly budded flowers, again, seeing, eyes, which smelled so delicious, again, smelling. I listened to the gushing water of the river, hearing. So you couldn't really recount your experience at the river if you didn't have those senses, because you experienced them through the senses. So they are so important. And when the senses are clear and clean, our recount, our perception will be also clear and clean. So if the sense gates are clean, the message will also be clear. When the message is clear, the mind's clear, and you will be in touch with reality much more closely than if your senses were clouded. And so if you imagine an alcoholic that clouds its senses through addiction, they don't get clear messages in their mind. Their mind's unclear, and they're definitely out of touch with reality, the way, it's cleanly perceived. Sure, it's their reality, but it's a very clouded, murky, depressed sort of reality. So if you want an alive, vibrant reality of life, keep our sense gates clear, and the perception will also be much more pure and alive. Now the thing is, there's one thing though, although the sense organs are really super important to keep clean, when people focus only on self-organ care but on nothing else, if they don't watch what they eat or they don't watch how they are starting their day, this is really not going to make a huge impact in their lives. So it's kind of like this, that the going to bed early, the eating an earlier, lighter dinner, and the breath body practices, they're kind of the dough. They're kind of like the substance of something, of that cake. And then the filling is meditation and self-massage and start the day right. So that's kind of makes up the substance of the cake. And the sense organ care is really the decoration to make the whole cake look really beautiful and really refined, and super delicious and yummy. So again, the sense organs are important in the way we perceive the world. And since we are living in an environment like in America, where we can actually pay a lot of attention to our bodies and minds, we might as well do them and really get skillful and refined about the way we take care of our bodies. So there's going to be a lot of self-care therapies that I'm going to be suggesting. Now, they don't take a lot of time. And most people really love to do them because they feel really lovely. But there's also a lot of them. So don't fall into the trap of wanting to do them all at once. Do a Kaizen approach again. Choose one or two that are easy for you to adopt and work on those. A great place to start is knowing your weaknesses. So say for myself, my eyes are weak since birth. I had a couple of operations on my eyes, and they're still not functioning 100%. So for me, it would be a very good idea to focus on my eye care more. Another really important part of our senses is that as we age, our senses also shrink in their ability to perform their function, right? So most older people have less hearing ability, their vision goes downhill, they don't taste as well. And so I don't want that for myself, and I'm sure you don't want that for yourself either. So it becomes, again, really important to take care of those senses. Now, imagine for a moment if you didn't have all the senses that you did. Imagine a life without sight. You're blind. Imagine a life without hearing anything. You're deaf. Or imagine not feeling touch. You'd feel disconnected. If you couldn't taste, life would be unsavory, tasteless. What if you didn't smell? All of life would be unaromatic. So the senses are this important instrument for us to really enjoy our existence on this planet. So how do senses deteriorate over time? I got this from a friend who is an MD, who got this from a study. And she said that the first sense that deteriorates is smell. And with the deterioration of smell comes taste. And I'll explain it in a second how that goes. But then the second one is sight. You know, many people wear eyeglasses earlier in life. In their 40s, you see many people starting to wear eyeglasses. And then hearing is third. So why is smell? Smell is really the thing that goes out of balance first. But with it comes the taste of sight. And the problem is with us not really tasting our food properly is that we then make poorer food choices, because if we can't taste what we're eating, we can't make as intelligent of choices anymore. And if we don't feed ourselves, well, then we lose out on so many levels, right? But how is smell and taste even connected? That's just an interesting look at the interconnectedness of those two functions in our body. So food is typically said to be experienced in the mouth, but actually most of what we eat is entirely detected in the nose and not on the tongue. We sort of know this because if you've ever had a cold or a stuffed up nose before, you know that you don't taste your food, right? So I'm sure you have experienced that. So the taste receptors on the tongue and the receptors in the nose called deodorant receptors, they work together to tell us about the air we breathe and the food we eat. So let's look at smell. There is 12 million odorant receptors in the nasal cavity. And each is very sensitive to slightly different chemical structures. So whatever you're breathing in through the nose or your smell you're taking in through the nose, these different odorant receptors will give you a different response in the brain. So when molecules that are in the air enter the nose and contact the various receptors in the nose, a sort of a picture of the chemical composition of that smell is generated and then sent to the brain, and the brain then tells us what we're smelling. But then comes taste. So taste is a little bit more tricky, and there are 5 different taste receptors in the taste buds. And it is commonly said that there's bitter is in the back of the tongue, and salty is on the side, and sour is on the side, and sweet is in the front. Apparently that is actually not true. But actually what's true is that each taste bud can taste all of the different flavors. And these taste buds are distributed throughout the mouth and the upper throat, but mainly they're on the tongue. So what scientists are saying is this, and I'm just reading from here. Most food flavors are sensed via a combination of taste receptor activation in the mouth and vapor molecules in the mouth that are exhaled into the nasal cavity for detection by odorant receptors. So what's happening is that when you have food in the mouth, there are certain vapors that are directed into the nose, which then are identified as smell/taste. And that is what is actually giving us the sense of taste. So it's not necessarily the taste buds completely, but it's a combination of taste buds and the receptors in the oral cavity. They're then further saying the result is that chemicals that are inhaled are sensed as smell, and chemicals that are exhaled are sensed as taste. Interesting, right? The involvement of the olfactory receptors in taste is why food lacks flavor when the nose is stuffed up from cold. So then it makes only sense if we truly want to taste our food, we need to take care of the nose and we need to take care of the taste buds and the tongue, right? And by the way, on this picture on the right with the tongue, did you notice that this person had armor on their tongue? It has a light coating that's a little bit yellow in the back of the tongue. So I think last week we learned the back of the tongue is the large intestine, and yellow is a little bit of pitta, so she has some pitta armor in her large intestine. Yeah, so she needs to do something like a detox or something for her elimination. No? So let's move on to our first sense organ care. Let's start with the sense of taste and with the tongue. So some of you might know this practice, but it's very simple. You get a tongue scraper, and in the morning, right when you get up, you just take the tongue scraper, stick your tongue out, look at your tongue, see what's up on your tongue and take the tongue scraper and scrape over your tongue a few times. Nice time is 7 times, 1 time for each tissue layer in the body. And just look at the coating that's on your tongue and what color it has. If it's a white color, it's more kapha. If it's a more yellow or green color, it's pitta. If it has more of a black or gray color tone to it, it's more vata. And some people don't have any coating on their tongue. That's good. It shows they have less ama. But also if the tongue is too red, it could be that they have just so much pitta in their bodies that all the ama is burned up, but the pitta is actually burning up the tissue in the body. So we have to find a balance here. So we want to keep our tongues clean. And why is that? Because the stuff that is sitting on our tongue is bacteria from our mouth, and you want to get rid of it. What it also helps is to get rid of bad breath. We prevent oral decay because we're getting rid of the bacteria. We detox the mouth, beautiful thing. We stimulate digestion and elimination. Why is that? Because look at this map of the tongue. So we have the back of the tongue, you see the intestine, the large intestine, the small intestine, then a little bit more forward is the pancreas, the stomach, and more towards the tip of the tongue is the heart. Then we have on either side in the front of the tongue is the lungs. Then we have the spleen on the left side, liver on the right side, or rather, this is a mirror image. So if you were to stick out your tongue in the mirror, the same side where you see the writing, that's where it's going to be. So the liver, for example, shows here on the right side of this picture, and yes, the liver is on the right side of the body. Spleen is on the left side of the body. It shows on the left side of the picture, if that makes any sense, I hope. So back to our tongue scraping. When we scrape the tongue, what it does, there is tiny receptors on the tongue. We call them nadis. They're not really receptors in a physical sense. They're just the ending of nadis or energy lines that have a direct link to these organs. And so by us scraping over the tongue, we activate the endings of the nadis, and thus we activate the organ itself, and we help it to be stimulated. Pay some attention to your tongue when you stick it out in the morning in the mirror and notice what you see. Do you notice a coating on your tongue? Interesting. What color does the coating have? Is it more yellowish hue, green hue, gray hue, totally white? Is it thick or is it thin? What's it like? And which part of the tongue does it sit on? Does it sit more towards the back of the tongue? I may have something going on with my large intestine. Is it maybe sitting over your heart? Do you have something heart issues going on? It could be physical heart, could be spiritual heart. It could be with your heart muscle, or maybe just a region around the heart. So that's where the exploration starts. That's where your detective work starts. You're really your own detective when it comes to your health. So let's look at some of the different signs on the tongue that you may be noticing. So on the top left, you see some coating in the back of the tongue, the shape of a large intestine. Oh, so large intestine is something sensitive, something going on. On the back of the kidneys, there's a little bit of coating, or maybe there's some red dots, or there is some bumps, or there's some swelling. Whatever that may be that you notice, just something that looks out of order. You may I got something going on with my kidneys. Well, maybe I need to drink more water. Maybe I need to drink less coffee. Maybe I should take some dandelion tea and flush my kidneys. Then we have the delicate heart, right where the heart area is. We go back to this other picture. You see the heart is in the front of the tongue, right? So if you go to this picture, there's just something going on here in the front of the tongue near the heart area, and you can ask yourself am I having maybe tension around that whole heart area? It's a very common place in the spine also to be stuck. There's a lot of muscles and bones coming together in that area. So it's a common area for people to be stuck. Oh, then you could have something in the front here on the sides where the lungs are. But maybe there's excess mucus in the lung. Maybe there's some eucalyptus you can be inhaling or something to clear your lungs. If there's froth in the front, it means bronchitis. Very common also is the ripples around the tongue, which is the third picture from the top on the left side where it says unabsorbed nutrients. So the ripples around the tongue means that you're not absorbing your food properly. So your agni or digestive fire is low. So what you need to be doing is looking at your food choices. Are you maybe eating too much raw food and you need to be shifting over to cooked food more so you can actually absorb the nutrients better? Or maybe you need to take some herbal remedy, like in the form of a spices, so that you absorb your food better. What else is interesting? Interesting also the cracks in the tongue, the bottom left picture. If you have a lot of cracks like that on your tongue, it means you have a vata imbalance. And this is systemic here because there's a lot of cracks everywhere on the tongue. So it shows a systemic, so whole body vata imbalance. So maybe you should be eating more moist food. Vata reducing food, moist, warm food. If you have a lot of tremors in your tongue, so you stick it out and it's like moving a lot, it means there's a lot of anxiety and deep-seated fear. It's a vata disorder again. And then we have, there's a line on the center of the tongue. Now, some of you might not have that, and some of you might. I have a line on my tongue, and it represents the spine. So there's something going on with emotions held along the spine. So this is really good information to be had, right? If you know your tongue, there's a lot of information you can pull out. So in my case, this line on this tongue has been very deep. And over the years, it has lightened up. And what else is happening is that at the tip of the tongue, the line isn't straight, but it curves to the side a little bit. And I've been like, the front of the tongue is the cervical spine. Now the center of the tongue is more the center of the spine, the middle spine, and then the back of the tongue is the lower spine. So my deviation there is in the front of the spine. So there's something going on with my cervical spine. So a couple of years ago, I went to the chiropractor and said, hey, can you check out my spine? I think there's something out of balance, and I also noticed that my head is kind of tilted to the side always. My sister always commented on that when I was a teenager. And sure enough, the vertebrae are out of line. She adjusts me a few times, and that line in the tongue, it has gotten a lot less. It's still there, still need to work on it, but the line, especially in the front, it's not so visible anymore. So the tongue will change as you change the way you eat. If you change the way you live your life, the tongue will change also. Here's some pictures of the different constitutional tongues. So a vata tongue will be more thinner, longer, not so much substance to it. Often it has cracks in it. That's a vata tongue. It also looks a little bit more grayish or a little bit lacking of luster. A pitta tongue is typically pretty red and more substantial than the vata tongue, and it's not so sharp in the front. And then we have a kapha tongue, which is this really wide, large tongue, a lot of substance to it. That's a kapha tongue. And it tends to have a lot of mucus on it. If you're out of balance with kapha, you will have a lot of mucus on there because kapha tends towards mucus. And then we can put together the 6 tastes and what we see on our tongue. So let's go back to this picture here, and let's say we have a lot of cracks in the tongue, like on the bottom left, that picture. So it means we have a lot of vata. So now we can go back to the 6 tastes that we learned last time and ask ourselves, well, I have a lot of cracks on my tongue. It means I have a systemic dryness in my body. I should be eating things that are vata reducing so I can get rid of those cracks. And then we look at this chart and we see, salty, sour, and sweet are the tastes that reduce vata. So maybe I need to eat more sweet foods, like in the forms of grains, rice, and quinoa, and other kinds of grains, maybe meat, more dairy. A little bit more sour to increase my agni. That's also reducing to vata. Maybe a little bit of kimchi and sauerkraut or sour cream in my food. And maybe I'm missing salty flavor in my food. Maybe I should eat more celery or put a little bit more salt or seaweed in my food. So that's one example. Or say you were having a lot of coating around the lung area. That indicates more of a kapha sort of disorder. And say there's a kind of you're frothy also on your tongue. There's also a kapha disorder. So you can say, well, let's see. If I have a lot of kapha on my tongue, that indicates I have too much moisture, too much mucus in my body. What could I be eating differently? And then you look, kapha reducing is bitter, it's astringent, and it's pungent. So maybe I need to put more spices in my food. Maybe I should increase the amount of legumes I'm eating and decrease the amount of carbohydrates I'm eating, because carbohydrates are sweet and they're kapha increasing. Legumes are astringent and they're kapha reducing. Maybe I should eat more bitter greens. Maybe I should look at more salads or more steamed greens or something like that to reduce my kapha. So this is kind of this thought process that you need to put yourself through. It's a little bit more complicated than just getting a piece of paper from someone and saying, follow this paleo diet or follow this X, Y, and Z diet. But this gives you a lot of power to, when you start to truly understand this will give you a lot of power to really know on a daily basis, to check in with your body and say, what does my tongue look like today? Oh, I have excess vata. Oh, my skin's so dry, excess vata. Oh, I'm a little bit constipated today too. Oh, excess vata. Oh, let me look at the 6 taste chart. I should be eating a little bit more sweet, sour, and salty today. Maybe I should cut down on the spicy food and I should stop eating so many salads because that's pungent and bitter and that will increase my air element. Maybe today I'm going to have oatmeal for breakfast and I'm going to have a soup for lunch and a soup for dinner because that's all moisturizing, it's all grounding, has that water and earth element in it, and I'm going to put plenty of spices, but I'm not going to put it overspiced. So in this way, if you train your mind and start to think this way, you're going to have a lot of power over your food choices. So let's move on to oil pulling. That is another mouth-related practice that we do. So first we get up and we scrape our tongue, we make it clean, and then we can oil pull. I have to say that oil pulling is not purely Ayurvedic, although it is, the credit is given to Ayurveda. But according to my mentor, it's actually nowhere written in the texts about oil pulling. But they have something similar. I think it's called gandush. I can't remember exactly the Sanskrit word, but it's more like holding medicated oil in your mouth for extended periods of time. Whereas oil pulling is really bringing oil into your mouth and swooshing it around for an extended period of time, 5 to 20 minutes. And it's not purely ancient, but I think it works, and that's why I included it here. It's I love oil pulling. I mean, I like it more than brushing my teeth now. It makes me feel so fresh in my mouth and so clean that I would, if I had the choice between brushing teeth and oil pulling, I would probably choose the oil pulling. And oil pulling is really rather odd at first, but once you start, you probably are going to get really addicted to it. So what you do is you take about 1 tablespoon of any oil that you have around, any good quality oil. I really like sesame oil. I know other people love sunflower oil and coconut oil. I don't like it. I tried that and I found it absolutely disgusting. But, this is an individual choice and there's nothing written about what works better or not. So I like sesame oil, and basically all you do is you swoosh it around in your mouth until it becomes a liquid substance. So the oil mixes with the saliva and it then becomes more liquid after a while. Then that can take up to 20 minutes. Typically, I'm done after about probably 6 or 7 minutes. It depends on how much saliva you have in your mouth. So you swoosh it around, swoosh it through your teeth, get it into your jaws, get it everywhere in your mouth, and then you spit it out, ideally into the trash or maybe outside. Now I put mine in the sink, and not in the sink. You don't want to put it in the sink because that might clog your drain. I spit mine in the toilet, and I have not found any problem with that, although other people might think there might be a problem. So if you want to be sure, spit it outside or maybe spit it into your trash can. Then swish some water through your mouth and your teeth and brush your teeth afterwards. You do not want to swallow the oil. It is not meant for the digestive system. It is simply meant to clean your oral cavity. So why would you want to do oil pulling? Now that's a good question. I find for myself, it gives me a really fresh taste in the mouth, and it gets rid of bad breath. It also, I find that it pulls ama out of my tissues in the mouth, and I can get rid of it. Also, there's gunk coming out of my throat. It definitely strengthens the jaw because you're moving a substance around with your mouth. I also find that it's really good for the jaw muscle in general. Not only strengthens it, but relaxes it. It can clear the sinuses, it whitens teeth. Now, this is really true. I've been doing oil pulling for a while, and when I went back to Germany last time, my mom commented on how white my teeth looked and how healthy they looked. And I'm like, oh, interesting, right? My mom wouldn't say something like this. If my mom is very sharp in the way she looks at somebody, means, you know, Germans always like to be very well put together, and they wouldn't comment on something like this if they weren't truly seeing it. It also strengthens the gums, and it just strengthens the teeth in general. So last year I went to the dentist and I had this little abscess, something in my mouth, and I said, hey, would you mind checking that out? That's been just like showing up lately. And she checked it out and she's like, oh my God, there's this huge abscess. Aren't you in pain? And I said, no, I just kind of came up and no, I just don't feel anything. And then she did a little bit more investigation and she said, well, you know, you must have had this inflammation, or rather this infection in your mouth for years, because the last time somebody worked on this tooth for you was 5 years ago, and they must have not taken out all the bacteria and an infection set in, and now we have to do a root canal. And I said, oh, that's interesting. No, I haven't felt anything. And in that moment was like, wow, it's the oil pulling that, for me, it was the oil pulling very clearly. You know, sometimes you have just these strokes of insight, and you know that whatever you've done is what contributed to this. She said, I can't believe you don't have any pain. You should be in a tremendous amount of pain. And I didn't feel anything. And this thing was there for 5 years and it never came out. And, you know, for whatever reason, it did come out finally. But I believe very strongly that if I hadn't done oil pulling for all these years, is that this thing would have shown up much earlier and it would have shown up in a much more nasty way. Of course, I have nothing to prove that, but that's just my experience. Kaizen approach. So you might be saying now, oh my God, oil in my mouth, that sounds so disgusting. Well, if that's the case, don't use a tablespoon of oil. Just use a little bit of oil and try it out. And if you don't like sesame oil, try sunflower oil or try coconut oil and just experiment a little bit. And the less oil you use, the less time you also need in order to make it liquid and then spit it out. And then over time you can increase it. You can do that. Or another Kaizen approach might be you do use the tablespoon of oil and you simply put it in your mouth and only swish it around for a minute. And then the next time you increase it to 1 minute and 30 seconds and then to 2 minutes or whatever that may be. So I really love oil pulling, and as I said, you can use any oil that you find in the grocery store, any organic, good quality oil. There's also a really beautiful oil by banyanbotanicals.com. It's called Swish. I think Daily Swish, it's what it's called. I mean, it's absolutely their best oil. I think Banyan has kind of middle of the road kinds of oil, but that particular oil is absolutely outstanding, and I would very much recommend that. It's called Daily Swish. It seems to me that Ayurveda has this obsession with oil. That's really the thing in Ayurveda. There's lots and lots of oil, especially in all the orifices. Yeah, so last time we talked about self-massage, so there's oil all on the outside of the skin. Now we already put oil into our mouth. And now we're going to talk about other places to put our oil. So, next up is, how do we take care of our nose? And there's two practices that we can do to take care of our nasal passages. One is nasal irrigation with a neti pot, or nasal oiling with the nasya. Why would we want to do neti pot? Why do we want to pour salty water through our nose? Sounds pretty disgusting or something. I know many people, especially people with allergies, already know about this practice, but you might not, so I'm going to go over it. So what does it do? Well, it cleanses any dust, dirt, and grime out of your nasal passages. And when we do that, well, we feel more alive and vibrant, first of all, in our minds. There is also often excess mucus in the sinuses. And we don't want that there, because in the mucus, bacteria, viruses, and other things can sit that then make us sick. And by us just getting that mucus out, we actually make sure that we stay healthier. And it's really great for preventing allergies, or preventing stuffed up nose, or preventing your immune system to go downhill, really. This particular practice is really good for kapha type people because they tend towards a lot of mucus in the first place. And they are the ones needing to get rid of the excess mucus. It's also good for people who are around a lot of dust, dirt, and grime. So that would be people working in construction, for example. Or say you're out hiking in the backcountry and it's very dusty where you were. Doing a neti pot at the end of the day might be really nice. Or say, when I was traveling in Nepal and I was doing a bike tour, oh my God, the air was so bad. I mean, Nepal is so beautiful and the air was so bad around Kathmandu. They're still using a leaded gasoline there. And so after a day of bike riding around the Kathmandu Valley, we would be spitting up black mucus. So it was absolutely necessary for us to do the neti pot. There was all kinds of black shit coming out. And it was just the neti pot was the remedy. It was the rescue. Otherwise, I don't know how sick we would have gotten. Even children can use it. Children are in the kapha times of their lives. They need to get rid of that snot too. And of course, the child needs to be old enough to be able to do it. But I've seen my mentor's child. She was 4.5 and she was playing around with it. Wasn't super skillful at it yet, but she could do it. So it's possible. Now, if you're a Vata or a Pitta type, and you tend towards dryness in the first place, well, neti pot doing very often is maybe not your practice. That might imbalance you too much, because neti pot is more about purification and cleansing rather than rejuvenation. And Vatas and most Pittas need more rejuvenation than purification as a general rule. So what are we cleansing? You can see here in the pictures, we're cleansing the sinuses and the nasal cavities. So there's not all this crap sitting around in there, making our minds cloudy and making our nose stuffed up and making us not feel very healthy. So in this picture, you can see all the sinus cavities. I love seeing that. We want to keep those clean, and we also want to keep them moisturized. So next up is Nasya. And so while neti purifies the nasal passages, Nasya oils the nasal passages. On this picture on the top left, you see the woman doing it in the right way. So she's lying down, she's tilting her head back, she's putting 2 or 3 drops of oil into her nose, into one side of the nose only. Then you close the other side with your finger and you sniff up like this. And then you wait. You wait 1 minute and 15 seconds. That's what the scriptures say. 1 minute, 15 seconds. You wait. Then you take the dropper and you put 2 or 3 drops in the other side of the nose. You close the other side of the nostril and you sniff it up again. So you really want to get that oil into all of those cavities in your nose. And you might be noticing that the oil will not only get into your nose, but it then goes into the back of the throat often, and it gets into your mouth. Like, see that on the bottom right in this picture? Not quite, you can't see it quite, but see how the nose is connected to the mouth. And so that often happens, and we often then spit out the excess oil that comes out through the mouth, and that's perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is, like this guy in the bottom picture, is standing there with the head straight and squirting the oil up and sniffing it in. That doesn't give the right angle for the oil to really deeply penetrate into your nasal cavities. It won't feel very good either. And now if you're super lucky, what you can do is just go to an Ayurvedic practitioner and request a Nasya treatment, which is really a very lovely treatment that involves a shoulder and a neck massage, head massage, warming up of the nasal cavities with herbal balls or with some kind of warm cloth. And they are then inserting the oil for you and you just sniff it up. Very lovely treatment if you ever have the chance to do it. It's very nice. And we have seen before that the nose is very important for our taste of smell. For our taste. If we can't smell properly and if our nose is not well taken care of, we can't taste our food properly. So we want to keep the mucous membranes really nicely nourished so that they can do their protective functions, because the mucous membranes are really there for protective function. And if we don't nourish them, well, they can't show up for us. So it's really a two-way street here. So what does Nasya do? Well, we said a little bit, it improves the sinuses and it brings nourishment to the sinuses. Interestingly enough, it also relieves any discomfort from the shoulders up. So think headache, think tension in the neck, in the jaw, TMJ, anything that's happening in the head area Nasya will be taken care of. And this is from the ancient text, by the way. It improves headaches, allergies, and congestion. It improves the sense of smell by lubricating and nourishing the mucous membranes. It improves vision. So again, anything above the head, it improves. It enhances the voice. Beautiful. Brings mental clarity. Breaks up old belief patterns. Because belief patterns sit in the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the mind. Yes, the fourth layer of our existence, Vijnanamaya kosha, or the intellect. So it helps us break up old belief patterns. So in fact, I just have a Nasya oil from shaktiveda.com, and one of her oils was brewed with the intention of breaking up those old belief patterns. And I do have to say it works really well. It's a very nice oil, and I do feel like things that I have been holding on to for a very long time, things that are more coming from social structure, from social conditioning, that's the sort of thing I am starting to let go of. And I believe that this Nasya oil has a little play in that. It cleanses the sinuses and improves the sinuses, gets rid of sinusitis, helps with fatigue, tiredness, and weakness of the body. Also bursitis. It helps with bursitis, which is a pain in your hip area. Very interesting. It must be the connection of the different nadis that are connected to your nose, because the nose is really the doorway to prana, and it's one of the major entry points into the body. And with prana, we're taking in life force, and life force is just that which makes us alive and free. So keeping our nose really well lubricated and well taken care of makes so much sense. What kind of oil should you get? Well, again, any high quality oil from the grocery store will do. Traditionally, always is used sesame oil. I'm a big fan of herbalized oils, just because the herbs have such a powerful effect on the mind. So you can get those herbalized oils from Banyan Botanicals. There's the picture here from Banyan Botanicals. They have a good middle of the road tridoshic Nasya oil. Then there's also shaktiveda.com, and she has just very lovely oils. If you're choosing to use just a simple oil like sesame oil or sunflower oil or ghee, sesame oil is on the heavier side and more grounding, so it's very good for vata imbalanced people. If you're pitta imbalanced or kapha imbalanced, sunflower oil might be your better choice because it's lighter and less warming. Ghee is cooling and can be used by pitta. Very nice. So you can just use maybe your finger and maybe insert it, or you can put it in a dropper bottle, the ghee, and just put it in warm water for a minute or two so it gets liquid, and then you can insert it into your nose. It's also very lovely. Here's what the ancient text to Shuddha Samhita has to say. Nasya removes clouding or dullness of the sense organs, imparts a sweet aroma to the mouth, and strength to the teeth, jawbones, head and neck, arms and the chest, and guards against an attack of baldness. It also can prevent Vyanga, which I don't know what the heck that is, premature graying of the hair, and the premature appearance of wrinkles and furrows. So, it also helps with aging and looking younger. How cool is that? So what's the Kaizen approach around Nasya or Neti? Well, quite frankly, there's not much of a Kaizen approach. The Kaizen approach would be to choose either one over the other. But really, these two practices take so little time, it's almost silly to choose a Kaizen approach. So choose one or the other and try it out. I mean, Nasya takes really 1 minute at the maximum. And if you're really in a rush, you can just stand in the bathroom, tilt your head back, and do it in the bathroom without lying down. And that would be the super Kaizen approach to do it. Oh, and by the way, some people say Nasya and Neti should not be done at the same times. Other teachers say that it doesn't matter, that you actually can do it one after the other. But for myself, I tried doing Neti first and then doing the proper Nasya. And I have to say that it didn't work for me. It just is too much. I felt like doing neti in the morning and then nasya in the evening, that's okay. But doing one right after the other didn't work for me. Maybe if I had left a gap of 5 minutes, that'd be okay. But I did them right after the other. And I'm like, no, that's just, it's too sensitive after the neti. It just didn't feel right. So just experiment a little bit. And this is really what all these practices are. You have to find the things that are right for you. I can only give you guidance. I can give suggestions, and I can give you past experience. But really it comes down to you getting to know your own body and what works for you. Let's move on to the eyes. We have covered tongue and taste and nose and smelling. So next up is eyes. There is a couple practices we can do for the eyes. And that is, well, cleansing. We can rejuvenate them. And we can strengthen and relax them. And so we're going to talk about each of these individually. So first, eye care cleansing. So what you need to get for that is a little eye cup. They are available in glass form, or they are available also in plastic form. So what you do is you get this eye cup, you put lukewarm water into the cup, and a spritzer or two of rose water. And then what you do is you put it to your eye and tilt your head back slightly and blink your eyes a few times. And you do the other side, put the eye to the cup to the eye, tilt your head back slightly and blink your eyes. And that's it. Super quick, doesn't take more than 15 seconds. And that just cleanses the eyes. And rose water we use because roses have a special affinity. We call it a prabhav for the eyes. So it's very cleansing to the eyes and cooling to the eyes. The eyes are a fire organ, and we want to keep them cool. We never want to put something hot on the eyes. Make sure that you're getting a rose water that is free from additives. Sometimes some people get them from the Indian grocery store, and they are not very good rose waters. So that's it. There's nothing more to say to that. It just keeps the eyes clear and clean of grime and dust and dirt, and just gives them some attention and love. Then we have rejuvenating and strengthening the eyes with Netrabasti. So Netrabasti is simply putting oil in your eyes. And the easiest form you can put oil in your eyes is just take a tiny little dab of ghee and put it in the side of your eye. And blink a few times so that the ghee melts and it goes over your eyeballs. That is so lovely, especially if you have dry eyes and you're used to using like droppers from the pharmacy or something. Instead, what you can use is simply ghee. And ghee has a cooling quality, and that's very nice. A client the other day, she didn't like the smell of ghee, so she's using coconut oil. So that works as well. So that's the simplest version. What you want to watch out for is to not do that in the morning, because if you have ghee in your eyes, then you won't see properly. You probably can't read very well, and it's not so good for driving a car either. Instead, you might want to do it at night. So now if you want to do the more luxurious version, you could see an Ayurvedic practitioner, and they would make a dough dam for you out of a specific flour. And they would put it around your eye, and then they would fill that dough dam with a substance, usually ghee or some kind of medicated ghee, to relax or strengthen the eyes. It's an incredibly beautiful thing to receive. It's so nourishing and relaxing, and something you probably have never experienced before. And yes, you are opening your eyes, and the eye will be completely submerged in oil. So why would you want to do that? Well, lots of reasons. First of all, it reduces a lot of tension around your eye area, and that helps with headaches. Also really good for dry eyes, itchy eyes, any sort of disorders in your eyes. You can't see well maybe, or your vision is deteriorating, or you have allergies in your eyes. Well, all of that will be very nicely relieved through this Netrabasti. It improves your vision. You're going to be able to concentrate better. It's really good if your eyes are strained from too much computer or TV time. Very, very nice practice to do. Now also, wrinkles around your eyes is going to be getting better. So again, anti-aging. Oh my God, so many little practices in Ayurveda for anti-aging. And then it slows the natural degeneration process of the eyes. So lots of reasons to do that. So if you're going to an Ayurvedic practitioner, obviously you have to pay them. It costs like maybe $80 or something like that. What you can do instead, if you don't want to spend that money, although it is a very lovely thing to do and I recommend it to everybody. But what I just found this out. I've never seen this before. I just saw this. This woman is using goggles, and she filled the goggles with warm ghee. So obviously not hot, but just it's kind of cool, lukewarm, skin temperature. And she puts the ghee into the goggles, and she lies back and lets the ghee rest in her eyes. I mean, that's just such a cool home remedy sort of thing to do. I actually can't wait to try it. This looks so yummy. And the third thing we can do for our eyes is strengthen and relax them. So in fact, we can do this right now together. So find a comfortable seat if in a good position. Otherwise, you can just imagine it. But make sure you're having a little bit of space for your arms and interlace the fingers. And then make wide circles with your arms in one direction in front of your body with the hands interlaced. And that just releases tension in the shoulders. Because if you're tense in the shoulder, that can translate into tension in the eyes. And then go the opposite directions with your arms. Just creating some movement and get some gunk out of your shoulders and your neck. Now turn the palms the other direction, so face the palms outward, and then circle your arms again, same thing. Circling the arms in one direction and circling the arms in the other direction. Right, so then, palming the eyes, slap your hands together a few times, rub your hands so that there's some warmth being created. Now, if you're in front of a table, bring your elbows onto the table and your hands, palms over your eyes. And just rest your eyes into the hands and receive the warmth from the hands. And then you would sit here for 5 or 10 breaths. Rejuvenating your eyes, giving them some love. They do so much for you throughout the day. You might as well give something back. And letting that go. Now there's various things you can do with the eyes. You can, like you see in this picture, you can look right, left, or you can look up, down. You can do from one corner to the other corner. We're going to do figure eights. So just trace a figure eight with your eyes. Just to strengthen the eye muscles. You can do that for 10 breaths. And then we're gonna zoom out. So hopefully you're sitting in a place where you can look far into the distance. Like I'm looking at this tree out my window. And I'm gonna just look at the tree and make sure that I'm not seeing anything before it. So I'm not looking close to me, but I'm looking really far away. Because most of the time we are sitting here reading or looking at the computer screen or looking at our plate, what we eat, or looking at our cup and see what we're drinking. And now we don't spend so much time zooming out in our vision. So that's what we're doing now. And we'll do that you can do that for 10 breaths. And then lastly, we're going to just blink a few times. So basically you just blink and then you wait for a couple seconds and you blink again. That watery consistency in your eyes plays a vital role in eye health and in vision. And by blinking, we replenish the tear film that covers the surface of the eye and the cornea. So it lubricates the cornea and it protects it against dryness and dust particles and other irritants. So was research done, and you could just keep blinking while I'm talking. So the research shows that when we watch television or we use the computer, we actually blink less. And so blinking becomes even more important. Otherwise, our eyes get irritated. So actually taking a moment, when you spend a lot of time on the computer, maybe once a day or twice a day, if you just blinked for a few times, you're simply nourishing your eyes. So, we just did a few minutes of these eye exercises, nothing too fancy, super simple. There's not like a scientific thing that you need to be learning. It's put some palming over your eyes or make some figure eights, zoom out and zoom in. It's all very simple. We just have to remember to do it. And one of the things quite frankly, my eyes have been rather strained, right, since birth. And I haven't spent a lot of time really actually working particular on my eyes. But now that I'm re-looking at this, I will make an effort to put this into my routine. And the way I'm going to do it, because this is something so little that might be hard for me to remember, I need a trigger, right? So I'm going to put it in my phone, and I'm going to put it for 10 a.m. and for 3 p.m. in my phone. And so then there's a reminder going off on my phone and say eye exercises. And it's whatever I'm doing, I'm going to drop and do my eye exercises for a minute and a half. I mean, really, I can do it while I'm talking to somebody. It's not really going to take any time out of my day. All right, going back to our oils and orifices. So now we have oil in our mouth, we have oil in our nose, we have oil in our eyes. Now we're going to put oil in our ears. I told you Ayurveda is really obsessed with oil. So here, ear care, Karana Purana, cool practice also. So you lie on your side with a pillow that you don't, with a towel you don't care about underneath your head, so you're comfortable. And then you drop 2, 3, 4, 5 drops or so in your ear and let it sit for 5 minutes. In this picture, somebody is doing this to this lady. You can do it on your own. It's a little bit funky to do it on your own, but it's possible. And then you turn around, put the other ear down, and the oil will come out. So that's why we're using an old towel we don't care about. But the oil will come out. Then you put it in the other ear and let it sit for 5 minutes. So that also, what that does is, besides nourishing the ears and the eardrums, the ears are so etheric, right? So ears relate to the ether element. And so they are particularly sensitive because ether is very subtle and ether is very sensitive. So nourishing the ears becomes doubly important. But what it also does is, because we're putting oil in the ear, we're actually turning our sense of hearing off. And the internal faculty of hearing, it's going to get turned on. You'll notice what that means. If you don't know what internal faculty is, you'll know when you do it, that when you lie down, it's just like this. You don't hear with your outer ear anymore, but your ear is starting to turn inward and is starting to hear inner sounds. It's very beautiful. It's a way, it's one of those practices that are pratyahara practices. Remember those 8 stages we talked about in yoga, and one of the 5th stage was called pratyahara, or withdrawal of the senses. Well, that is one of the ways we can withdraw the senses. And so it helps us to turn inward and become more in touch with our spirit and our internal selves. So what are some of the benefits of Karana Purana, or oil in the ear? So again, of course, it's against dryness and ringing in the ears. Many people, as they get older, they have tinnitus, which means it's ringing in the ear. Often comes from having gone to rock concerts when they were younger, or maybe my mom has tinnitus because she's a hairdresser and she's been around the hair dryer for so long that her ears just aren't doing very well at this time. So for her, the practice is really good to put oil in her ear. So also effective for loss of hearing, strengthening hearing in general, opens up the sinus region, reduces head colds, soothes vata imbalances, helps with tinnitus, we already said that, vertigo, ear congestion. Also anything around the face, jaw muscle, everything can relax. Anytime we withdraw the senses from the outside to the inside, relaxation happens. And what is relaxation? It's the opposite of stress. And when we de-stress, we automatically just feel better, muscles relax, we can just drop in, and things are becoming a little bit more easeful in our lives. So, we talked a lot about different little practices, and you might be wondering, well, how the heck am I going to put this into my routine? So I put together a little sample routine. This is very similar to the routine that I do in the morning. So wake up, I go pee. Then I do tongue scraping. I look at my tongue, check it out, what's up today. Often I notice there's coating on my tongue still. Oh well, still working on that. But I noticed it and I know, okay, what's up on my tongue? I also noticed that the crack in the center of my tongue is getting less. So pay attention to your tongue. There should be a tongue chart in one of your ebooks. And so you can print that out and notice your tongue. That's one of your homeworks, right? So notice your tongue and see what's up. Then I hydrate. So after I hydrate, I do Nasya. Then I do Abhyanga. While I do the Abhyanga, I do oil pulling. And while I take a shower. So the whole time that the Abhyanga takes me maybe 7 minutes and the shower takes me 5 minutes maximum. And while I do that, I do the oil pulling. And by the time I'm done with that and already maybe putting on a couple of clothing pieces, I can spit out the oil. Then I cleanse my eyes with rose water. I make some tea. I love my tea in the morning that is still in there. And then I do a little movement practice and I go to my altar and chant for 10 minutes. And then in the evening, oil in the ears and ghee in the eyes just before I turn the light off. So I'll take a few minutes, put oil in the ears, rest a little bit, turn my attention inward. That helps me also to sleep better. And then I put ghee in my eyes at the very last moment before I turn off the light because I can't read after I do that. I can't do anything else. So I'll do that right before I go to sleep. And as you may notice here, what's my trigger? So remember the trigger routine reward cycle. We always want that. So this whole routine is set up on prior action, right? So my action is waking up and getting up, which happens automatically anyway every morning. And then it sets this domino effect into motion of all these different habits. Yeah, I do Nasya because I hydrated. I do Abhyanga because I did Nasya. I do oil pulling because I do Abhyanga, like that. So prior action in this case, because they're such tiny habits, makes a lot of sense. And so just remember that whatever you're doing, these are a lot of little tiny habits that we're planting the seeds for the last 9 weeks. And there was a lot of little ones. But just remember that these tiny seedlings ultimately can grow to big trees and will eventually lead you to amazing health goals, health outcomes that you've set yourself out to do that you didn't even think you could accomplish. But by not focusing on the outcome so much, but really focusing on the process, all of a sudden the big tree might have grown. And it will happen, I promise. So just a quick recap. We looked at all of the 5 senses. The eyes, we're cleansing them, we are rejuvenating them with oil. The nose, we can cleanse it or we can rejuvenate it with oil. Touch, yep, we talked about that last time. Self-massage, so I pulled that out because that's just such a big practice on its own. Then we take care of the tongue, clean our tongue, we take care of our ears. And so all of our 5 senses are really taken care of super well. And then you might notice that your environment is changing now. So your bathroom is turning into this Ayurvedic treasure chamber. And there's all kinds of new things around in your bathroom. Eye cup and rose water and Abhyanga oils and neti pots and Nasya oils and this and that and oily towels and I don't know what else. And so you might notice that your environment is changing, and that's a good thing. Create the environment to remind you to do your practices and make it really easy for yourself. It's the worst thing to have an environment where you want to do your practice, but you can't because it's just not set up, because there's things in the way, or because you just bought new towels and you don't want to make them oily, or I don't know, you have carpet in your bathroom and you don't want to do your Abhyanga there, or whatever the thing might be. If your environment is such that it calls forth for you to do the practice, you will have a much, much easier time. So check out week 9 in the Student Resources Hub and do your homework and listen to some of the stuff that's in the back end. Super good stuff. And glad we chatted again today, and so glad you're here, as always. Much love to you. This is Alexandra signing off. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.